But I think underlying all this is, the UK is not the same UK it was 40 years ago. It's not even the same UK it was 25 years ago. There's millions of third world people that have immigrated into the UK by design. And you now have over 4 million Muslims in the UK right now.
And I'm joined now by Hal Lambert. Good morning.
Good morning.
How bad is this for the special relationship, do you think?
I think it's damaging. I don't know how lasting it is, but President Trump is certainly upset about it. He brought it up again today, and it said that the UK had been very, very, he uses it twice, uncooperative. He blamed the lease that you gave up the island for a lease, and he talked about immigration as part of it. But I think underlying all this is, the UK is not the same UK it was 40 years ago. It's not even the same UK it was 25 years ago. There's millions of third world people that have immigrated into the UK by design. And you now have over 4 million Muslims in the UK right now. And they're about 5% of the voting population. But in districts, Labour Party districts, they can be as high as 20 to 30% of the voting population. So I think that's why the prime minister, in a desperate move to hang on to power, is worried about that voting bloc. And I think that's affecting his decision making when it comes to, going after Iran, which is obviously a Muslim country. And they lost, a lot of Muslim votes over Gaza. And so the Labor Party is scrambling around, and a lot of it has to do with Islam.
I mean, the Labour administration here, and I'm sure lots of polling experts would say to you that even on the numbers that you've given there, I mean, there will be questions about whether or not that is the driving force of this government, whether or not that is driving Keir Starmer's policy. He would say it isn't.
Well, I'm sure he's going to say that, but he's moved around all over the board on this. And as Trump said, President Trump, he's certainly no Winston Churchill. But yeah, I mean, did the Labor Party not lose seats to independents in this last election? And that was in areas where the heavy Muslim vote moved towards the independents or the Green Party or didn't vote. So they're not
But I
going to
suppose
vote. Yeah.
I suppose what you're implying there is that there are a group of voters in this country who are only motivated by foreign affairs, by one
Absolutely.
particular issue.
Absolutely.
I'm saying I'm not sure that's quite right.
Well, did you not have protests and lots of massive demonstrations over Gaza and supporting Palestinians? And weren't those protests all basically in the Muslim communities?
Well, no, actually, a lot of people who attended those protests were not Muslim. A lot of people who attended those
What
protests
percent?
were young
What percent?
white people. Well, you tell me
Okay.
what percent of those people who attended
Well,
those
I
protests. I
can
mean, we
tell you
can
what
argue about
percent.
numbers, but the broader question is whether or not that is realistically an argument that you can make, which is driving the Prime Minister forward in this particular case. I'm sure the government would say it is actually based on their interpretation of international law, which is something that's also been raised by the Maga base in America.
Well, look, there's international law and there's American law, and President Trump abides by the Constitution. And yes, there's some on the MAGA side that are disappointed in this because they do view the Middle East many times as being kind of never-ending wars. But I don't think that most of those people are involved in fact, none of them are in classified briefings. I try to not comment as much on international affairs because I don't have classified briefings either. And so, unless you're in the classified briefings room, you don't really know what's going on. President Trump's tried to let the country know and the world know that he felt that Iran was positioning for a first strike. There's also been reports that the way they were set up with their enriched uranium, they could, if they wanted to, create a number of nuclear weapons within a week. They hadn't done it yet, but they could. And they started negotiations reportedly by saying, look, we have a inalienable right to have nuclear weapons. And that was the beginning of the negotiations with the Trump administration. And so they have no intentions of not moving in that direction. They had no intentions of creating any kind of peace in the Middle East. And I think after 45 years, President Trump just decided, we're done putting up with this. And I think the world is going to be a lot safer without the mullahs and without the Ayatollah running Iran.
There have, though, been conflicting justifications. Marco Rubio, for example, has suggested that Israel were about to strike and that American service personnel would have been put at risk if America didn't join in. There have also been a lot of conversations publicly about regime change. I mean, there are differences in how this war has been sold. Is the Prime Minister here not justified in asking for more information before jumping right in?
Well, when you say jumping right in, you mean allowing the U.S. to use bases from which to launch systems. He has the right to do that, and he did it. And now he's going to have to deal with the consequences with President Trump. He's very unhappy about it. And President Trump said, today also, he was going to cut off trade with Spain. So look, again, it goes back to me, politicians. Most of the time, it goes back to votes. And I just disagree with what you said earlier. I think a lot of it has to do with parliamentary seats, a large voting bloc within the Labor Party, and many of the seats of Muslim populations. And it's only going to move greater in that direction because of the immigration policies that you guys have and the differences in the number of childbirths between Muslims and native uh, UK people. So, again, as far as the special relationship goes, I hope we can get it on track. But the way that the demographics are going, you guys are not going to be a Western country in 25, 30 years.
But I suppose that's what I'm having difficulty with, because the idea of a native population excluding those of the Muslim faith, it just doesn't make sense here, because there are many people who are of that faith who are British citizens who would say that that is exactly who they are. They that is how they identify, that this is their home. You
Yeah.
can't
Okay.
separate
Well,
out those two
you
groups.
you guys were the Church of England for 400 years. I mean, look, if you wanna play that game of, oh, there's many that have converted and they're native and they're British, you can play that game. But um, it- I think that your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. And when you have a massive number of people from third world countries in your country, you're no longer going to be a Western country. And we can all hide from that. I'm perfectly fine to say it out loud, and it's true. So in 25 years, when you look up, I think we'll both still be on this planet. We can come back to this interview and you can play it. But I think that the UK in 25 years is going to be a very different place than it is today, and it's a very different place than it was 25 years ago previously.
Can we end finally on where you think the special relationship goes next? Because many people have said Donald Trump is transactional, and his anger with the Prime Minister today, this week, may well evaporate in the coming months. Do you think that's likely, or is this now set? Is this change now set?
Oh no, I think it could change. I think President Trump could move back to wanting to work with the prime minister again. That's absolutely correct. So I think they could have a meeting, and President Trump could walk away going, "Okay, everything's back on track." I don't think he's going to hold a grudge on this. So I think if things move in a direction where we're working together, I think he's perfectly happy to do that. So I do agree with that.
Hal Lambert, thank you very much for giving us your time today.